traveling to Mars from Earth at current speeds takes what? 18 months?
Yeah.
5 months?
Yeah.
Some month amount of time.
Yeah. Alex, on the last episode that we did, we were talking about games that were too big and too small. One thing that I was citing was Starfield when we got to the point about talking about being too large. You brought something up during that conversation that I wanted to just expand upon a little bit, which was the idea of, like, having space be kind of like a medium that ends up creating too much of a large area that doesn't really do anything. When we get to a point where we're saying, like, it's a space game, and then you have to be in a spaceship, and we have to go out into space, it just kind of draws the game down from being, you know, like an actual game to being just like an open area of nothing, because space is a void. So, yeah. What is your experience with space games, and what happens when we end up with these vast areas of nothingness?
So, for anyone who's new to the show and watching this because you like space, hi. I also like space.
We love space, actually, but
I have, like, about 800 hours into Elite Dangerous and probably 100 or 200 into EVE Online. I've tried games like X4 and any other space game that you get a spaceship in. I've tried basically at this point,
you've
even if they were terrible.
You've probably put a couple 100 hours into No Man's Sky, too.
150, 200 hours in No Man's Sky as well. And I personally think that most of the games are too big. No Man's Sky is an infinite explorable universe.
Yes.
You know, that's huge. That's unnecessary. Elite Dangerous, 1-to-1 scale of the
Galaxy.
Milky Way.
Yeah,
you can go to all the stars in there, and a lot of them are named after ones that are actually in our sky. And are, so if we have them cataloged, a lot of them are actually the same type of star that you would find there potentially. So that's cool and all that, but, you know, there's a space station in Elite Dangerous, for instance, that you get to the system, and this is way far off, so it's a really long journey to get there as is. Jumping stars to star to star to star.
Yeah.
But the space station in that system is a legitimate about 45-minute cruise from where you enter the system in your spaceship until you get to that space station.
Yeah.
In game.
Yeah.
In real life, same time. It's gonna sit. You were gonna have to sit there and just kind of go, guess I'm gonna go do something else for the next 45 minutes.
Right.
While my ship travels.
Yeah. Yeah. There's always a good thing where, like, a game says, here's 45 minutes of you just in travel with nothing to do in the meantime.
Right.
Really just drags you in, immerses you in the experience.
And so I guess it's like, I get it, it's cool, and it's immersive because, you know, it's taking as much time as it would at the speed you're going.
Sure.
And at that point, your ship is going several times the speed of light in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
I get
so it's
it.
going pretty fast, but it's like, it doesn't give you a sense of scale, it just gives you a sense of too big for that end. On the other end of that spectrum, you get things like Starfield.
Yes.
Where the space you actually fly your spaceship in is very, very limited, and the travel between planets and even systems is relegated to a cutscene.
Yeah, the thing that's interesting about Starfield is that the space, when you really think about it for more than a second, the space portion of Starfield is completely irrelevant to the game. It really doesn't enhance anything. I think it was it Chara Lanazard was thinking to herself at one point, like, could I just travel, like, to Pluto in like the Sol system, and took her ship to Pluto, and it takes a long time if you're traveling in the actual region, because the whole point of Starfield's system was pretty much go to outer space, tell them what planet you want to go to, and then tell them where you want to land on the planet, and then there's a cutscene and you go to the planet. They don't really have a system where you actually travel to the planet and then land.
But if you can actually go in space and travel to the planet itself, like just using your spaceship, see, that would be more immersive to me. That would be more fun or interesting, I guess. But it's still boring because between point A and point B, I'm sure there's a lot of nothing.
Right, and the thing about it is that when Alana actually gets to Pluto, it's really just the skybox. Like, it's just the image. It's not actually the planet itself. Okay. So you still have to, like, select Pluto as the planet that you're going to.
So what's the point of making it to scale travelable if it's just a skybox?
Because then you can say that it's a space game where you have spaceships, and that's a thing you can do now. There's very little in Starfield that you actually do in space except, like, blow up some asteroids and occasionally do combat and, like, talk to other ships. But none of that really, I felt, enhanced the game at all. And I would have much preferred, like, and maybe there's actually a, I'm now actually wondering if there is a mod for this that just eliminates that aspect entirely so that I can just hop from planet to planet and then just instant select that I go from this planet and then just immediately land on another planet.
Probably.
And then, you know, I can still build your ship. You can still build your ship so that you can store stuff and do crafting and things, but, you know, you can just say, oh yeah, no, I go from, like, what is it, New Eden, I want to say. You go there, and then you go to the outside, three systems away, and you just jump there and just be done.
And like, so for that game, most of the travel you do is fast travel. It's not built around exploring like an open world itself.
No,
it's
like a wormhole.
Open world. Yeah, it's open world in the sense that you can explore the world while you're outside there, and it's instanced open world.
Sure.
So it's more in line with like what Final Fantasy Online does.
Okay, yeah.
Which is the MMO one.
Sure.
It's an open world, but that one is not like you can just wander around. Skyrim, for instance.
Right.
That one is you have smaller maps, and then once you reach the border of that map, you load into a new map.
One of the examples that I would give that kind of eschews all of this is Outer Worlds, because with Outer Worlds, they give you a ship, and you have, like, a crew that's on the ship, but basically they just have a map in the ship, where it's just like, these are the planets, and these are the ports that you have available. Do you want to travel there? And then you just, like, your ship just docks there. And there's nothing in outer space, and honestly, nothing of value was lost in the process.
I will say, actually, now that you mention Outer Worlds, a game that actually I think does space well.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
Is Outer Wilds.
Yes, I understand.
But they do space well because it is not built to scale of how big a space would be. This is a small system, and getting to places does not take long.
The other thing that Outer Wilds does that makes that useful is that you are on a timer, and going to these places and figuring out where you're supposed to go is kind of part of the puzzle of the game. So the space part is intrinsically important to the gameplay. You can't lose it. Unlike some other games where it really is extraneous in its pursuit.
And I think that, I haven't played Outer Wilds, and I don't think you have either. But both of us have seen many a video essay on it. I'm sure at this point.
I've tried.
And I've watched someone do an entire live play series of it. I feel like the benefit they have is that every location you can go to in Outer Wilds is interesting and integral to doing the game itself. Or there are secrets, but there's always something interesting where you're going. Even, like, exploring the outside of the planet. And the planets are small, so you can explore the whole thing.
Sure.
So, when you get a game Outer Wilds size, and then you get a game Elite Dangerous size, where it's, yes, you can technically explore the entire planet that is about the same size as the Earth if you'd like to, on foot or in a buggy. It will take you an incredibly long time, and it will be full of mostly nothing.
Right.
As opposed to Outer Wilds, which is, hey, yeah, if you want to actually, like, go entirely around the Ash Twins, like,
Oh, sure.
on foot, it would take maybe a couple minutes.
Yeah. Again, you are on, like, I think it's a 22-minute timer, so it would be incredibly stupid of the game designers to make a system where you then have to take a half hour to travel around the planet if you only have a 22-minute time frame to do so.
And I think the biggest difference there is that when people want a game that is a spaceship game or in space like that, they want it to be sci-fi and action-packed, which is fine. Outer Wilds is sci-fi, but I wouldn't call it action-packed. If anything, I'd call it a puzzle game with some platform.
Right.
It is very interesting, but that's not really the point. I think just the scale in which space is portrayed is not conducive to making it interesting. It's too empty.
So I have tried Outer Wilds way back when it originally came out. I actually have it downloaded because I was planning on maybe trying it again for like one of our live streams. Mostly because it was like one of my second chance games, because when I originally played it I didn't gel with it. I didn't get into it, even though I was like, well, I get the concept and everything. But the space part was never my issue. It was mostly I'm not quite sure what I'm doing in this game, or what my end goal is. Like, I was really trying to figure out, like, what am I supposed to do here? And I think maybe now that we're so many years out and I kind of get a better idea of what the idea of the game is, maybe I'd get it more. But I think that one thing that we can, agree on is that they did a good job with the implementation of space itself, because it made sense for the game. Then you do have those cases, and even No Man's Sky is at fault for this a little bit, where they just want space to feel really big and epic, but that means that they have to create space that's just really, really big and long, and it creates a problem where you're not getting to the best stuff in the game. Most of the time in No Man's Sky, I pretty much just like try to fast travel to the planets that I want to go to. You go hyperspace, and yeah.
I mean, the thing there is that for No Man's Sky, it's the planets are the interesting part, and in space you can occasionally get events that do happen. But if you're just flying in space, it's like not much is there. Which, again, space is big, space is very big, and mostly empty. So I understand that, but adding that into a game where you want people to be engaged and have fun means that you're not going to have fun unless you like exploring, and exploring empty space in a system is not really that fun.
The anomalies are cool to come across. That was one of the things that I liked. But you could even do that when you're in hyperspace, and it will tell you about it. Same thing with like Everspace 2. Everspace 2 is actually completely in space. But the reason why I think that works is because they make space the actual game setting. And so when you go to an area, it's actually a smaller contained area, and space is the actual field that you're going in, where there's exploration elements, and there's combat, and there's things to discover and resources to gather in a smaller space. And then when you want to travel to another area, it goes into like a hyperspace from point A to point B, and then brings up along the way, like, oh, here's other points of interest if you want to go there. And then it's, again, smaller contained areas without having to deal with the enormity of space. Like, you just know it's there, but you don't have to interact with it. The vast openness of space. And that's fun.
So I think, personally, and I've said it before, I think the easiest, or the best thing that someone could do, if they want to make a space game, is make it just take place in, like, the solar system.
Sure.
You've got 8 or 9 planets, depending on what they want to use, an asteroid belt, and then the Kuiper belt out past Pluto to deal with. You've got all of those planets, all the moons. You don't need a giant universe. You can have so much in that. Like, traveling to Mars from Earth at current speeds takes what? 18 months?
Yeah.
5 months?
Yeah.
Some month amount of time.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Even at light speed, it's going to be taking you a while to get there.
It would take way less time, obviously, at
Oh,
light
sure.
speed. But at that point, you just reduce the speed limit that players can go below light speed. Like, sorry, you've got really fast engines, but they're not actually, like, light drives yet. You can't go faster than light.
Not Star Trek level. We're not going warp speeds. So there's that.
So that would be more interesting, because then you could fill all the locations in the solar system with interesting things. Because Earth is huge, Mars is huge.
Yes.
Huge. You've got Jupiter, which is gargantuan.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and between Jupiter and Saturn, you've got over 100 moons.
Yeah.
So it's like you could do all of this. You could just add space stations. You could add random events. You could congest some traffic lanes between planets that are more stable routes or more heavily space truck or highway type things.
Sure.
So that people don't come and pirate you on these. But if you're out in the open, you're on your own.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But there's plenty of things you can do, even with a comparatively small setting. You don't need an infinite galaxy.
No.
You need points that are interesting.
Yeah, I think the end conclusion that we kind of come to is you need games that are going to present you with lots of interesting things that are going to be fun to explore. And when you create a massive amount of space between two areas, you create a void that has nothing of interest for you. You have to find a way, if you're going to do that, you have to find a way for that also to be something interesting that players can latch onto. Otherwise, it's just there for the sake of being there. And to say, hey, look at how vast our game is. Well, no, it's not really that vast. What it is you just took the fun part here and the fun part here, and you just put more space between them for like 40 minutes, as you were saying, like 45 minutes, so that you can travel to the thing. It is getting me to
Don't forget your free anaconda when you get there.
Oh, perfect. Can't wait.
Not a snake, it's a ship.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's kind of worth it if you get a ship out of it.
Oh, yeah. That's why people make the trek.
Perfect. I am starting to think, though... Yes.
And then are sadly disappointed when they find out it was all just for control.
Oh. There is no free anaconda? Oh, that's true. Well, your anaconda don't want none.
Unless it's got solar systems, son.
Yep, exactly. You know what could have been really interesting as like a space-based game is Stargate. And I don't think they ever actually made a game out of Stargate, but that's one of those things where you just travel from a planet to another planet by locking in the key codes, and you go through the Stargate, and in like less than a minute, you go from planet A to planet B. You don't need ships.
Well, you
don't need anything.
You just have that in No Man's Sky, so you're fine.
Yeah. That's true. They do have like the Stargate. They did borrow heavily from a lot of other sci-fi properties.
As one should.
Yes.
What would be a really interesting setting for something in space would be you're on a planet that's orbiting a black hole. Your view, when you look out towards the sun, as it were, is a giant black hole on your horizon at all times. That'd be fun. You could still have, like, a star. You could still be, like, orbiting a star in your own system, but your system is in pretty close proximity to, like, a super massive black hole.
Right.
And so maybe it restricts you from leaving your star system, but you can also see the black hole eating other stars and whatnot.
Great. Yeah, that would be something. I can see using space as a really interesting, like, setting for a horror game. Not even just, like, in a spaceship, because, I mean, they've obviously done that, but just the idea of kind of having to traverse this, like, endless void, not knowing where you're going, and not knowing what's out there, and then getting this sense that you actually are not alone, and something else is actually out there in the endless black of space, and being almost followed or pursued with no idea of where you're supposed to go past that.
I feel like there's a game that has come out kind of recently, maybe?
I have seen some like horror survival games that might be set on space stations. That's always a good place for it.
It's different.
I mean, obviously, Prey was one of them, but also Dead Space is a good example of that. Dead Space, actually, when we got to the third one, did have some sections where you're actually floating out in space around the stations on the first half of Dead Space 3. I think the only reason why that works is because you can't really get too far out, or your oxygen's going to deplete and you're going to die. So you have to kind of stay where the actual station is.
Voyager 19. I did look it up right. Retro, single-player exploration puzzle, text-based, Lovecraftian. It goes with what you were just saying. I knew it was named Voyager, I just couldn't remember what number, and then it didn't come up when I was just searching on Steam.
Yeah, I'm thinking though that if you took this concept and you tried to expand it out to like a full 3-dimensional one where you actually, are out in space, maybe you actually don't have a spaceship at all and you're just in a suit and you're watching as your oxygen meters and everything go down and you're just trying to find anything that you can use to not die while you're out in the void of space. Because there's this thing that I always get a little bit creeped by when I'm watching movies where it's in space and you see the person get detached from the space station or something and they're just floating out there in midair, where there's something very deep down inside of me existentially frightening about that, where it's you have no agency at that point and you're just floating in nothing. And
yeah, that's the thalassophobia you've got.
Sure. And the thalassophobia is a great name for a game, and they should just make that game. And it's a puzzle game.
Thalassophobia is the fear of the deep water.
Oh, yes.
But a lot of people have the same fear for space.
Yes.
Which is usually astrophobia.
Oh, yeah, astrophobia.
That's generally just the fear of space. But in the case of deep water, for instance, to people, it can be the fear of just the big emptiness.
Just in a nutshell, I guess the idea of space as this giant void is one that doesn't really work very well in the context of a lot of games the way they're designed. I think if you were to try and do that, it would have to be a focal point of the gameplay itself. It would have to be utilized. We were talking about Outer Wilds, where space is intrinsic to the gameplay and the exploration elements. Games that try to eschew it or try to, hand wave it away. And then some others that have decided that they're going to revel in it and try to make it the longest, most drawn-out experience possible. And I just don't appreciate it. Sometimes space is just an extraneous add-on that didn't need to be there. You just put it in there so that you could say, look at the space game I made. Yeah.
Look at this game set in space. Ooh, so big.
I said a game in space. It's really sweet, guys. It's I understand that, but the space itself is usually not a great medium for gameplay. It's a big open void, and you're not going to get a lot of great gameplay moments out of that. So, yeah. Something to consider. Not just, space is a good example of that, but there's others. We touched on the idea of water, big open areas like that that seem devoid of stuff might be atmospheric, but they don't necessarily make for great gameplay. So, something to consider. Basically, I guess this is us saying, Starfield, you can just get rid of the space part. That was pretty much our thing. If you have an example of a space game that did a good job implementing space travel, let us know in the comments down below, because I'm kind of tired of traveling through space. So, me personally.
I can do more of it.